In the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, there have been many athletic dual-threat quarterbacks. Such quarterbacks as Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, and Donovan McNabb. All these quarterbacks have led their respective Eagle teams to many playoff appearances, and even some playoff victories. But this next dual-threat quarterback for the Eagles has already eclipsed many of these players' accomplishments. Is Jalen Hurts a franchise quarterback? Can Jalen win the Super Bowl? How do you think that Jalen will be as a leader now that he has gotten paid? Sit back and relax as on this episode of Football Craze, we make it a Philly thing. Stay to the end and find out what the chances are that the Eagles and Hurts get back to the Super Bowl this upcoming season. What has made Jalen such a great athlete and leader? What impact did Hurts have in his college career? There is a special bond between a father and son. There is also a special relationship between a quarterback and his head coach. Early on in Jalen's life, the two types of relationships were combined. Hurts attended Channelview High School in Channelview, Texas. In high school, Jalen's father was his head football coach. Out of high school, he was considered a 4-star recruit and was also considered to be one of the top dual-threat quarterbacks in the class of 2016. In addition to being on the football team, Jalen was also a powerlifter in high school. In Jalen's sophomore year of high school, he would squat 500 pounds and would become a finalist in the regionals. Jalen decided to attend Alabama and was highly recruited by defensive and offensive coordinators of Alabama at the time. Alabama is a college program that churns out NFL talent each year in the draft. Jalen was up for the challenge to become another player from Alabama to be drafted to the NFL, but that did not happen. Stay tuned to find out what had changed along the way. Jalen would come into his freshman season with a goal of becoming the starting quarterback in his freshman year. Jalen would accomplish this goal and do something that hasn't been done since 1984 and Vince Sutton. He threw for 2,780 yards and 23 touchdowns with 9 interceptions. His completion percentage was at 62.8%, and he finished the season with a quarterback rating of 139.12. He rushed for a total of 954 yards and 13 touchdowns, breaking the school's single-season record for rushing yards by a quarterback, surpassing Stedman Shealy's previous record of 791 yards. He finished the 2016 season with 36 touchdowns, breaking the previous record for touchdowns in a single season for the Crimson Tide, 35, set by Blake Sims in 2014. He was the first player in Alabama history to pass for 300 yards and rush for 100 yards in the same game, and the first quarterback to rush for 120 yards or more in multiple games. Going up against the Georgia Bulldogs in the 2018 College Football Playoff National Championship, Alabama fell behind 13-0 at halftime, and Hurts was benched in favor of true freshman Tua Tagovailoa. Tagovailoa led the Crimson Tide to a come-from-behind 26-23 victory in overtime. Hurts finished the 2017 season with 2,081 passing yards, 17 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception to go along with 855 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. In Jalen's junior season, he would have to play the role of the backup quarterback, but was brought in to play in certain sets. However, Jalen would get a bit of revenge on the Georgia Bulldogs. In the 2018 SEC Championship game, Hurts would have to come into the game to replace an injured starting quarterback. Hurts would bring the Crimson Tide back to win the SEC Championship. In Jalen's senior season, he decided to leave Alabama so that he could assure himself an opportunity to be the starting quarterback. Jalen decided to transfer to another powerhouse program in the University of Oklahoma. In his first game as a Oklahoma Sooner on September 1st, 2019, Hurts shattered Oklahoma's single-game yardage record in a debut previously held by Baker Mayfield when he put up 396 yards of total offense against Akron in 2015, putting up 508 yards of total offense against Houston. On September 28th, in a 55-14 victory over Texas Tech, he had 415 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, and 1 interception to go along with 9 carries for 70 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. At the end of the 2019 season with the Sooners, Hurts finished runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. What would be next for the rising quarterback star? What would his big achievement be? With the 53rd overall pick in the second round, the Philadelphia Eagles drafted Jalen. At the time, it was a confusing selection by the Eagles because they had already drafted their franchise quarterback a few years prior, as reports later would prove that the current Eagles quarterback, Carson Wentz, was not a team player, according to reports from teammates. So the Eagles general manager, Howie Roseman, drafted Hurts as an insurance policy that Howie would have to utilize in the 2020 season. In Week 13, Carson Wentz was benched for ineffective play, and Jalen got his first touchdown in a loss to the Green Bay Packers. The very next week, Hurts would be named the Eagles starting quarterback, facing a New Orleans Saints defense that was number 1 in the league at the time. Despite the Saints' defensive talent, Hurts led the Eagles to victory. The Eagles weren't only transitioning from one quarterback to another, but the franchise was transitioning from one head coach in Doug Peterson to new head coach Nick Sirianni. Along with this fresh new start for the Eagles going forward, Hurts decided to change his jersey number to 1, signifying that he was quarterback 1. The team leader in the Eagles locker room for the longest time was center Jason Kelce. But Jason knew that the only way that the team he loves so much can succeed going forward is if there is a new, younger, and fresh voice to lead the team. In a team meeting in the beginning of the 2021 season, Jason stood up and told Jalen that this is your team now, lead by example. Jalen certainly did just that in the 2021 season by making the playoffs, when most experts had the Eagles picked to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. However, that playoff berth would have Jalen and the Eagles facing off against the defending champions in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jalen and the Eagles would get overwhelmed from the very opening kickoff and would lose in that game. In the following season, Jalen was determined to set the temperature in the locker room. The Eagles started out hot, along with Hurts proving all his doubters wrong in the process. Hurts led the Eagles to a 14-3 victory and a divisional title, but he wasn't done there. He led his team through the playoffs and all the way to the Super Bowl. In the Super Bowl, Hurts would face off against another great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes. Hurts would fall short of his goal of a championship, but would show that he could outperform the MVP in a game. What does the future hold for Jalen Hurts? Can Jalen get back to the Super Bowl soon? During the 2023 offseason, Howie Roseman knew that he had one more year on Jalen's contract, and therefore had to re-sign Hurts to an extension. Hurts had a sports agent that was just starting out in the industry, and was determined to get Jalen a fair contract offer. If Jalen's agent could get him that big contract, then it would put her name up there to get more clients. Not only did the Eagles give Jalen an extension, but his extension makes him the highest paid annually player in the NFL. Jalen's contract was worth 5 years and $250 million, with $180 million guaranteed. Not only does this contract put Jalen on the map for money, but the expectation for Hurts just went up. If we look forward to the 2023 NFL season, the Eagles and Jalen have a strong chance in making it back to the Super Bowl. The Dallas Cowboys still have Dak at quarterback, but Pollard coming off a bad injury and Elliott leaving doesn't help their offense. Along with the fact that the Cowboys have had a large change in the coaching staff by firing at least 10 coordinators. The New York Giants have Daniel Jones and basically the same team as last season, so I don't fear them getting in the Eagles' way. The Washington Commanders don't have a good quarterback, and the franchise itself is in a state of transition, due to the team being sold. If we zoom out of just the division, then maybe a team like Seattle can put it together. But if Aaron Rodgers gets his way and moves to the New York Jets and out of the NFC, that would be one less good quarterback to worry about. Not only is the path for the Eagles' success open for the taking, but the road for Jalen's continued success in his progress in the NFL is wide open as well. Don't be too surprised if Jalen is in the running for another MVP race. Young quarterback along with a young and fired up head coach will be a fun team to watch in the coming years. Not only did the Eagles get their franchise quarterback locked up long term, but Jalen has now reset the quarterback market for guys like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and Trevor Lawrence. Now that he has the money, he now has to capture the title. Whether you're an Eagles fan or if you are just a football fan, Jalen Hurts will have his fingerprints on this league for the next 5 years at least. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Football Craze. Please make sure to join us again real soon.